Okay, so I got some things going on. I did move the Ranger outside, so I had a little bit of room to work over here. Cleaned up my table and everything that I had from building the transmission. This is the 4L80 that I just got done building. I put a Jake's Performance D3 trans brake, a new 300M input shaft, and a billet forward hub in there. Also put a Jake's Performance freshen up kit in there, so it's got all new clutches and seals and everything. And this is going to be going in the Escalade here. So I started working on this thing. I got both the drive shafts out, the crossover pipe off. I have all the torque converter bolts out, and I'm starting to work on getting the transmission propped up so I can actually start to remove it. So I have this jack here. I built this little transmission stand for the 4L80 actually. Pan goes up against this section, and it's just a 240 SX flex plate, and just kind of welded that thing up. And it actually works pretty good. So I'll put this thing under. I'm going to support it underneath the pan so I can take the cross member off, and then I'll get the transfer case off. So there's the turbo crossover, there's the downpipe that goes to the muffler. I got the starter off. I did take the bottom two bell housing bolts off. Converter bolts are out. Front drive shaft is removed. I did take the shifter linkage off. So I have the shifter linkage on the front and the back end disconnected. And the transmission plug out. Rear drive shaft is out. Then what I want to do now, like I said, is put the transmission jack underneath here, support this so I can get the cross member off, and then when I get the cross member off and out of the way, I'll have some access to the transfer case adapter and the bolts holding the transfer case on. I should be able to get that out. I do have a couple inches to drop this thing down here, so what I'll probably try to do is tilt the tail end of the transmission down a little bit so I can get to the bolts up there. But what I'll probably end up doing is taking the intake off just to make it a little bit easier so I can reach behind there and get all of the bell housing bolts off. Okay, so I do have the transmission out. I didn't end up having to take the intake off. I was able to just prop the back end of it up, and I was able to get my hands back there to get the top bolt out. I do have a bit of a mess I need to clean up. I spilt a lot here coming out of the transfer case, but that's okay. We'll just clean it up and crawl back under. There are some things I do want to work on and clean up underneath there that I'm not going to be using, so I'm going to take the old fuel lines and cut the fuel lines out. I want to cut out the old transmission cooler lines. I did order a TrueCool 40K transmission cooler. There's going to be plenty of room up here, so I'm going to take this transmission cooler out. And then I'm going to do 6 AN lines from the transmission to the TrueCool. This should clean up a little bit more room down here too, because I'm going to cut these lines out. These are the cooler lines going up. These lines I just have looped right now, so they were, instead of going through the radiator, they were looped and just going right to the cooler from the transmission. I think I'm also going to get rid of the loop that I have for the oil cooler line. I do have a block off plate, so I'm just going to get rid of those. So this will also give me an opportunity to kind of clean up some of these hoses. Right now I just have a lot of stuff kind of zip tied and hanging here. But these fuel lines, the old fuel lines, I'm going to cut the old fuel lines out because I don't need those, and they're just kind of taking up some space. It does make it a little bit harder to work on stuff up there, like getting my hands behind the intake, so I'm going to get rid of all those. Cut them out kind of all the way back as far as I can. And once all that stuff's cut out, I can start working on the cross member. So what I'll probably do is I'll take the 4L80 and I'll put it up in there where it needs to be, and then I'll just kind of mock this one up. I'm probably going to have to end up cutting it or moving this out. I think the pan is going to hit this, so I think it needs to be notched and then brought out, but we'll figure it out. And I just wanted to add, this hat while working under there is amazing. So I got my oil cooler and all the lines out. You can see it opened it up quite a bit here. I did get the oil cooler lines off. Put this cap on here. Gonna organize the wires a little bit. I'm probably gonna bundle them together and then tuck them up this way. I also did cut the fuel lines out, so that fuel line isn't here anymore. We got all kinds of room. All right, so I got this 4L60 off. I got the 4L80 back on. This is a little bit tricky. I have to use the second jack to jack up the side as high as I can, and then I have to tip the transmission down so the bell housing clears underneath the frame rail. So it's a little bit tight, but it kind of sucks to do it like this, but that's what I'll do. I'm gonna do it without a converter for now because I have a 4L60 flex plate on there. I gotta decide what I wanna do yet. But I got some time to decide because I still have to like measure and wait on a drive shaft and stuff like that. So it's gonna be a little bit. So I just wanna get everything test fit. And what I might do in the process of test fitting this and getting this thing mounted, I might start working on the turbo kit because I am gonna swap this turbo, and I do have the Fowler manifold. So I got to weld that thing up, so I might actually just kind of do this all as one project so that when it's back out and running, it has the new turbo on it. But let's get this thing in there, test fit, and I'll start chopping up this cross member. All right, so what we can do here. I should just get a second taller jack. So this is my tall jack. But I have the jack stand set high enough that it's comfortable to work underneath. So I have a dilemma where my tall jack is what I need to get the transmission up high enough to get it bolted on. So I'm not using that to get the side up. So I should just get a second jack. Let's see what we got here. Might be good if I just prop it. I have an idea. This might work a little bit better than a Ranger. Slick. Actually worked. Torsion bar. There. Whew. So that's how I gotta do it. Okay, 2 jacks are out, so that means it's in, right? Kinda. So the transmission is in, bolted up to the block, and I'm just testing the mount here. So there's this large section, and there's a couple options. Like you could notch that out, move it forward, cut this, and then move the whole thing forward. But I just put this piece of angle on there, and I think I might end up just going with this. The only thing I don't like about this idea, it'd be difficult to pull the pan off without a jack, because you can't really get to the bolts. It does clear the pan completely on the bottom side, but you just wouldn't really be able to service it or access the valve body without a jack or some way to prop up the transfer case so you could pull the cross member out. So it's really the only downside. So this is completely flush with the top on both sides. Well, this side's a little bit higher, but I think that might be what I do. So I'll probably start doing that in the next video. I'll trim this, make sure it's all even, and then grind this thing down, make sure it's nice good metal, and then TIG weld that thing on there. We'll paint it and get this thing mounted.